Hello. Oh God, I hate trash in the background. It's not really trash, it's just stuff that looks busy. Like this is my laundry room. Anyways, we're just gonna make the best out of it, okay? Let's see. More like it's my laundry room, y'all. So it is what it is. Anyways, stop moving. Here we go. Here we go. I'll just I guess I'll cut that part out. We'll see what happens. Hello, everyone. It is I, Tanisha Brignoni, back again with the continuation to Pimpette Chronicles. Yes, last time I was here was in October of 2024, and I was like, I'm gonna come back tomorrow. It is January 2nd, so I failed miserably. Like, that's ridiculous. I don't know how much time just passed so quickly or how time passed so quickly, but it did. So I want to get this over with. I need to move on with my life. But I said I was going to finish the book so that it is available to listen to in the future because we never know what the future holds. And I just wanted to have it out there. So when we last ended, or when I was last here, I was reading chapter 5, Gaining and Recognizing Your Power, I believe is what it's called. And so I'm going to continue on page 157. I'm just going to pick up where I left off. And so if you haven't heard, or if you're new here, go to my channel Candidly Speaking, and you can hear the whole entire book, chapter by chapter. You can just scroll through and listen to it. And yeah, but we're totally almost to the end right now. Got a tickle on my nose. Don't you just hate that? So we're almost to the end. I'm just going to start where I left off. Okay. Okay. Getting back to the issue. According to the National Center for Education Statistics, Black women are now the most educated group in the United States. As a result, we have now become the least likely to marry. Somebody got some explaining to do. The reason, I suspect, is simply because people with a higher socioeconomic status, which comes with education, usually seek a partner in the same category. Marrying and dating a man outside of your own socioeconomic status, or for our purposes, we will say level, is usually avoided for good reason. Generally speaking, people who come from or live in environments where struggle is the norm are not so eager to return to it once a relationship that equates to a come up is over. Try providing a potential mate with something that he may not be accustomed to, such as a fancy home, plentiful food, expensive clothes, etc., and then try to strip it away. If the person is mentally stable, then he may just walk away, but if not, the breakup will not be smooth. Remember, living in a stressful economic environment means that more than ever, people are likely to be dealing with mental illness. This is another reason why I believe it is important that you only date men who are generally happy in their own life. So, why is it that our average Black men are failing to realize that they have at their disposal what they have at their disposal and are creating an environment that ultimately makes the woman have to choose her own happiness and survival over Black solidarity? Let's also note that even when a Black woman chooses to date a Black male with a lower educational and economic status than her, she will often be met with distrust or the competition of the notorious side chick. It would seem that a brother, especially those on a lower tier than their mate, who manages to get a woman with her act together would do everything in his power to keep her. But in all of his arrogance and big dick energy, whether real or exaggerated, he will most likely keep up with the inconsistencies, game, and or promiscuity. When called out, some may not walk away easily. In addition, good Black men are starting to recognize that many of the men in our communities are simply jealous of the women, and those toxic dudes are obsessed with trying to humble those of us who excel. What better way to humble a woman than to pit her against other women or make her compete for you, the man, who most likely has less going for himself than she does? I hope that some of these good men will start doing something to change this dysfunctional behavior, such as offering a little guidance to the ones who are failing in the character department or the brothers who are contributing to the broken hearts and broken homes epidemic. Excuse me, I got a little congestion today for whatever reason, which is why I'm sipping tea. We become part of the problem when we stand by and allow disrespect. When you sit around and chat it up with dudes who aren't being responsible, then you are supporting the damage they are causing. How often have we witnessed a man intentionally trying to bring a woman down a peg? Self hate is real, and I see no end to these issues anytime soon. They are complex, and although most can agree that it is by design, like so many other issues amongst the Black community, no one can agree on how to remediate them. On another note, be wary of men who think they have a little bit of wealth, who act suspicious, cheap, and petty while courting you. Even if you never ask him for a thing, he will be looking for some sign that you are after his imaginary pot of gold. If you should ever dare to request any assistance, he will immediately believe that you are a gold digger. My rule is that if I must ask, then I do not want it. Please note that if a man is willing to watch you struggle in any regard and does not offer to assist, he does not have your best interests at heart, and it is best to move on and cut your losses. You should not have to prove yourself to anyone, especially one who asks to come into your world. Sometimes the man making 60,000 per year will care for you better than the one making 120,000. If he does not see your overall value and net worth, he does not deserve you anyway. Let me move this way. Recently, a well known radio host made an interesting statement where he mentioned the white male's goal was always to have the Black woman by his side. He further stated that the way to have the Black woman by his side was to eliminate the Black male as competition. He concluded that this has, in fact, mostly been accomplished via the help of mass incarceration. I agree with him to an extent, but honestly, it is starting to look more like Black men are eliminating themselves, mostly by continuously playing games with the women they date and simply devaluing the Black woman as a whole. We see it every time a Black man gains a little success and immediately chooses to marry outside his own ethnic group. It is often his belief and a myth that in doing so, he is upgrading from the type of woman he most likely used to help get him where he has arrived, the good old Black woman. The greatest, most recent example could be seen where a Black billionaire uplifted an entire non Black family, making his wife with zero talent a billionaire, to eventually have her leave him for a white man conveniently after birthing 4 kids by him. Cha-ching! The billionaire, also known as Knucklehead, admitted in his song, y'all know the one, he had he married a Black woman, can you imagine how this type of wealth could have affected her entire family and the community? But in the end, the success rates, let's start over. But in the end, the success rate for that interracial couple and others continues to be no greater than had he just married within his own ethnic group. Statistically, he had a better chance of success had he chosen a Black woman. And let me just add that even when white men marry Black women, they also have a better success rate. Things that make you go, I hope that the brothers wake up quickly because they are coming for your beautiful, often curvaceous, golden caramel to chocolate dip women. If you have a Black woman, and stop playing because the competition for quality Black women is about to get fierce. Oh my God, it actually has. And this book was finished about two and a half years ago, 3. It is really a trip out here, as y'all know, as of 2025. Black women are starting to date and intermarry for the first time since being in this country. It has often been said that one may love a good old steak every now and then, but a hamburger ain't bad either. Or, in case you didn't catch that, what I used to say to my favorite ex was, I may love your ass, but a substitute is just fine. Strong women will eventually walk away from any love that is causing them pain, even if it is Black love. Ultimately, my overall advice to anyone is to be with whoever treats you the best because truthfully, we only have one life to live. And at some point, you have to choose your own happiness. One thing I will add for those who decide to venture outside the Black zone, please make sure that if you do it well. Brad better be treating your ass like a queen or don't even waste your time. If you need an example of someone who did it quite well, that would be Eve. Y'all know Eve, right? The rapper, not the Eve from the beginning of time, supposedly. And please remember, all men can cause you pain. All relationships will have problems. Every man should be vetted and met with the same caution regardless of his race. Actually, I will even go as far as to say more. The last thing you want to find out is that you are being fetishized or that he is a closet racist. Just know that if you venture to the other side, make sure that you are being treated superbly And if you ever find yourself competing with another woman or in any bullshit, start over and throw that fish back in the pond. Okay. Excuse me. Okay. Next section, single mothers only. Being single can be extremely challenging for mothers, and sometimes it can get a little lonely. The majority of my dating years were spent as a young mother with 2 children. I have also spent most of those years in long term monogamous relationships. My close friends used to tease me and say that I monkey barred through men. The few that were around when my daughters were growing up lasted for about 6 years each. These men met me and then wanted to jump into a relationship, which is why I have been engaged several times. Luckily, the marriages never happened, but the choice to marry or not has always been mine. That is a story for another book. Well, actually, one marriage did happen, but anyway. Now that I am as seasoned as a good old piece of fried buttermilk chicken and my girls are adults completely on their own, I no longer move with the concerns that I had as a young single mother of 2 daughters, and I take my time when choosing a mate. When you have children, you have to navigate through life in an entirely different way. You must constantly be on the lookout for predators and be cautious about who you bring around your children, man or woman. You must be extra careful who you date because you want to make sure that you are around to raise your babies. You do not have the luxury of hanging out with drug dealers, criminals, or any other low level dudes. Look that. When my children were young, I would first analyze the potential to see if he would be good for my children and me. I chose who would be the most beneficial to our lives as a whole. It didn't matter how cute or sexy he was if I found him to be selfish or completely uninterested in my well being or that of my girls. I chose those who understood the assignment and made it clear that they wanted to be a part of my world, which included all extensions of me. I slowly introduced them to my daughters, and I only dated men who had daughters of their own. This was because I believed men who held healthy relationships with their daughters were least likely to be predators. I further believed that if I could reduce the likelihood in any regard, I definitely would. Thankfully, in my situation, my analysis was right. In my lifetime, I have been blessed to have met really good men who still to this day my daughters and I can call on in the case of an emergency. I have learned that there are good men in the world, but that does not necessarily mean that they are a good fit for you. I believe someone can be good to you, but not necessarily your match. As mothers, our first obligation is to ensure our children are provided for, protected, and loved. If the man couldn't make life better for the family I built, then he was not an option. Yes, as a woman, I understand that you want to feel loved and all that jazz, but once you bring someone else into this world, your needs and wants are secondary. Please trust me when I say if a man is truly into you, he will make sure that you and your babies are taken care of and never take anything away from your child. That includes all of your time. This does not mean that you, no, this does not mean that he will not want or deserve alone time with you, but a good mate will only feel comfortable doing so once he knows your kids are being taken care of. This also doesn't mean that he is now responsible for what you and your children's father should be responsible for, which is your kids. Just that he will more than likely desire to pick up where the other man falls short or simply add extra. Also, remember that men will judge you based on how you prioritize them in a relationship. If you are willing to drop everything on a whim to have fun with him, he will most likely not take you seriously and believe you are a bad parent overall, especially if someday he wants children of his own. The fact is that grown men understand that a woman with a child, wait a minute, the fact is that grown men understand that to date a woman with a child, he is getting a package deal, and any man coming into your life should not be hesitant, alarmed, or act jealous when you have to divide your time between him and your offspring. The really good men will show you that they want to care for you and your children. They will eventually encourage you to sometimes bring them along on your dates. Too often, we hear stories about boyfriends and husbands that are not the kid's natural father, and sometimes even the fathers, doing something horrible to the child, and we wonder how the mother did not see the signs. My advice is to always be extra careful who you bring around and teach your children to tell you everything. Also, teach them to yell and say no to people who touch them or make them feel uncomfortable. A child who is empowered to speak will grow up to be a powerful human being. The key is to remain alert and never let your guard down. Always be proactive in protecting your children and never ignore the signs that tell you something is off. If you get a gut feeling about something, you are most likely right. Your child is your most valuable asset, and their protection is more important than your gratification. Be mindful of who you are dating and really get to know them before letting them completely into your world. I'm gonna be doing that the whole time. Sorry. Nipping it in the bud. Next section. Tina was a young single mother of two school-age girls. She had been single for a couple years after being in an abusive relationship with her children's father. She was living in an apartment building next door to her good friend Leslie, who always mentioned how Tina should find a man to help take care of her and her girls. Tina was in no hurry to settle down again and was comfortable with the quiet life she had built with her children. She kept a neat, clean She kept a neat, clean apartment and worked full time to provide for her family. She was living paycheck to paycheck, but overall, their basic needs and some of their wants were met. One day, Leslie asked Tina if she could introduce her to Ron, a friend of a man she was dating. She told Tina he was a nice looking, slightly older gentleman who worked at Chrysler. Leslie was impressed that Ron drove a fancy sports car and had no children. She said they were stopping by that night and would bring some drinks. Tina hesitantly agreed. Leslie was older and more experienced than she was, so Tina looked up to her and often took her advice. If she thought Ron was a good catch, then he must be. Soon, Leslie, Ron, and Joe, Leslie's boo, were at Tina's door. Tina was thrown off because she had assumed that they would all just chill outside of the apartment on the picnic tables like she and Leslie usually did. Tina reluctantly let him in, and immediately Ron walked into her apartment strutting like a peacock. In a big, hefty voice, he looked at Tina and said, mm, I like what I see. Tina was immediately turned off by Ron. Tina despised men who sized her up and thought she needed their approval. Ron began strutting around her apartment and saying how nice it was. He even went as far as to confidently look into the bedrooms and exclaim, "Oh, this will work out nice." Seeing how uncomfortable Tina appeared, Leslie tried to rectify the situation by properly introducing them. Tina looked at Leslie and gave her a look that said, "What the fuck is this?" Ron had not even spoken 2 sentences to Tina and was already trying to figure out how he could move into her place. Tina was young, but she wasn't that dumb. It was a late summer afternoon, and Tina's children were playing in the yard with the other kids in the neighborhood. She sat near the window where she could see and talk to them. She was already certain that Ron was not a match, and she was irritated that Leslie had brought such a clown to meet her. No amount of money nor a fancy car was worth her ever giving up her power to be led by a man who didn't even know how to get his foot in the door before assuming that she would want him. He was totally uncouth and clearly used to getting what he wanted from women. He was a very handsome, tall, cocoa brown man, but all she saw was an arrogant headache. She was not interested. As the evening went on, they all talked and laughed while Tina sat waiting for it to be over. During the conversation, she brought up the fact that she held her CPL and that her brother stayed with her periodically, just in case Ron's ass was some sort of psycho. She did not want him to know that it was just her and her 2 daughters living there. If he was a lunatic, she wanted to make it known to him that that she was not going to be an easy target or a victim. She was mad at herself and Leslie for having to think like this. She realized that Leslie was not as wise as she thought she was. After a while, Tina leaned out the window and called out to her daughters that they would have to come in for bed in 15 minutes. As time passed, Ron kept looking out the window and looking at his watch. Soon it was time for the girls to come in. Ron quickly yelled out the window to Tina's children, "Y'all come on in now. It's time to come in." Tina was horrified, and Leslie saw it on her face and began to laugh uncontrollably. Tina looked out the window at her kids, who looked shocked and scared, partly because they had partly because they had not even met this random dude, and because a stranger was making demands and shouting at them. At that moment, Tina knew he had her fucked up. She then told everyone that it was time for her to put her kids in the tub, and she turned to Ron and politely said, "It was nice meeting you." Leslie and her dynamic duo left, and Tina began to get her children ready for bed. She was disappointed in herself for allowing this to happen. The next day, Ron called Tina, said he had a nice time, and asked when he could see her again. Tina firmly said that she was not interested and that she was getting back with her kid's father, a lie nonetheless. He asked her why she agreed to meet him, and she simply said that she was not sure until this morning. Luckily, Ron bowed out gracefully and never called her again. This was a life lesson for Tina because this situation could have gone bad for many reasons. Her biggest lesson was to never allow anyone, no matter who they were, to bring random dudes to her house and to not follow behind Leslie blindly. Older ain't always wiser. What Tina did right was read those red flags. The first one was when Ron made reference to his approval of her in a way that suggested the choice was completely up to him. Nowadays, men who still look at women as if they are standing on the auction block are the kind you want to stay clear of. The second was when Ron felt comfortable enough to strut around her house, someone he just met, and reference how comfortable it would be for him. And the final and biggest one was when he had the audacity to yell at her kids and order them to do anything. In Tina's mind, if he was this comfortable on the first day of meeting her, while even having any type of relationship with her or her daughters, what else would he potentially be comfortable to do? Her instincts were to protect her most valuable assets at any cost, which meant turning down a potential, quote, catch if he exhibited any controlling or questionable behaviors. A grown man who would not, a grown man who would order someone else's little girls around so easily gave an indication of what type of relationships he had been in and what type of power he held in them. Ooh, excuse me. Men in my life have often told me that they personally would not even trust some of their male friends who were daughterless around their own daughters. We know that all men aren't predators, but unfortunately, the ones who are do not wear a sign telling us. So until they prove otherwise, our guards should always be up. Childhood is a short childhood. God, let me slow down. Childhood is a short part of life and should be spent happily and trauma free. The ultimate job of a mother is to protect her offspring. Okay. Don't be fooled by the okey doke. Next section. As a single mother, you may sometimes run into a special breed of Negro who will prey on you. These clowns are the kind of dudes who intentionally go after women with children to simply string along. Okay, my eyes itching. They are looking to settle down with a woman without children, but meanwhile, they will fuck and date the ones who have them, unbeknownst to her of his true nature. Sadly, these types are the hardest to decode because Slick is their middle name. A couple of older friends of mine were strung along on and off situationships by the same two dudes for over a decade who later admitted they were simply waiting for children to grow up before they would commit. They did not want to be a stepfather, and looking back, they actually showed signs of this all along. Now that I am older and wiser, I can remember very few times, if any, when these clowns did anything to show that they cared about the children. I guess these women either ignored or did not see the red flags. Fate would have it, as these men grew old, they actually revealed their secret. By then, they were practically by then they were practically elderly, used up, and quite frankly, rather ugly. Nobody wanted them, not even the women they once had wrapped around their fingers. Remember, men on average do not hold up as well as women, so we'll always have that going for us. This is yet another reason why I say protect your duty. I personally knew a man who had 3 kids he was half-ass raising and married a woman who had abandoned hers just so that they could run around, get drunk, and be irresponsible together. For men, it does not matter whether or not they themselves have children of their own. Some single fathers will still view a woman who has responsibility to care for a child as less attractive than a woman who does not. The audacity. These man-childs will start pretending excuse me, these man-childs will start pretending to care about you and your babies, but then start switching up once they get the goods. I want you to always demand the best treatment, no matter how many children you have. If he switches up his energy, switch yours up too. You will still make whoever is courting you continue to do the things we discussed in previous chapters and the things that you require him to do. Make sure he remains consistent. Believe me when I say a grown-ass man will recognize a good woman and mother, and he won't shy away from something as simple as a little responsibility. As long as you have that baby daddy in check, he is not the problem. As and your shit is tight, meaning clean house, you look your best, you have your own money, enough to pay your bills, you don't have to be rich, can take care of you and your babies, and then you can still land a decent mate. He may even be a little older, but often mature men make for excellent husbands to younger women. They are usually too old and tired to play games and generally just want peace. After all, men love to strut like a peacock, and what better way than having a chick a decade or more younger than him on his arm? In his eyes, he is definitely winning. I can assure you that I have never had a hard time finding a good man, even with two babies on my hip, because I have always carried myself in a way that demands respect, and men will fall at your feet when you do so. If he does not, kick his ass to the curb so hard that your ankles hurt. No time to be crying over spilled milk. The reality the reality is the more children you have, the harder it will be for you to find a suitable mate. But it is not impossible, so never let anyone make you feel that it is. My mother had 4 children before she married husband number 2, and my granny had 7 when she found her second husband. Times have changed, but as long as you have made yourself the best version of you, you will still be considered a catch. But please do not be out here birthing babies like you are trying to repopulate the earth. Children are expensive and should be brought into this world as long as you are certain you can provide for them. Mama's baby, daddy's maybe. As mentioned previously, keep in mind when deciding to have your children that since men are free to impregnate different women, many will move on to start an entirely new family with another chick with little regard for the ones they leave behind. Some will also impregnate multiple women just so that they can bounce between households throughout their lives. I don't know exactly what the science behind this is. Definitely some bother. Let me say that again. I don't know exactly what the science behind this is. Definitely some bottom beater activity, but I have seen it entirely too often not to recognize it as a thing. The only thing that will likely slow down a breeder is child support kicking his ass. And even then, some would rather or work under the table than provide for their own offspring. Goofy. The bottom line is always, in all regards, ensure that you and yours are taken care of first and foremost. Just because you may already have a child does not mean you have to settle for anything less than what you desire. You can still have it all. Uh-oh. Let's see how much more we got. We got one more chapter, y'all. Should I go through? I'm going to push through. This is going to be a long one. This is our favorite chapter. Well, I don't know if it's our favorite, but a lot of people like it. It's called Sex Life Matters. Chapter 6. Don't let nobody ruin your good time. Juanita Hill, Auntie Extraordinaire, circa 2019. We have all heard the saying, pussy has power, and maybe you believe it does or maybe not. For the sake of discussion, let's assume the affirmation is fact and common knowledge. Let's review how this power can be used for good and not evil. The first thing we are going to address is the recent epidemic of poor pussy management, also known as PPM. You know what? I feel like this chapter needs to be read separately. So we're going to do that. We're going to end this and then we're going to pick up. Okay? I will see you in 5 for chapter 6.